Hey everybody, welcome to the Purpose People podcast. Today I've got Henry Rossiter from Belmont Estate. So welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Really looking forward to being here.
No, it's great. So obviously I managed to spot you a little bit further down the road driving, but I saw the big B and the E and I thought, there he is. So there's a power of brand that's rescued you from being lost.
Exactly.
So
it's nice to see that it's working.
So Henry, we always ask this question. It's like when you were younger and you were at school, what did you want to be? What did you want to do in life?
Really good question. For me, it sort of started off as I've always had this interest in mainly in food, probably because I'm led by my stomach. But it's for me, I was originally born in sort of North London-ish, St Albans area.
Yeah.
My mother eventually got her way and dragged my father back to the West Country.
Yeah.
And that was my first real exposure to effectively the countryside, to mud, to dirt, to where our food comes from.
Right, okay.
And holding my hand up, probably a little bit embarrassing, I cried the first time I fell in mud.
No.
I was not a fan. I was a real city boy.
Yeah.
But I very quickly adapted and found that passion. And I started working at a local dairy farm, literally 150 metres up the road. And
how old were you then?
I was probably about 6 years old, to be fair.
Right, okay.
So we'll not tell HSE that, but it was one of those ones that eventually probably by about 11 years old, I was milking the full herd. It was about 140 cattle, doing it all by myself. I'd get up at, it was about 4:45 in the morning. I'd head up, I'd milk the cows on any day that I could, and then I'd come back, get washed and go to school, often stinking of cow manure. But that was where the whole passion arose, and it was somewhere in that line that I realised I wanted to be involved in food, in farming, in creating something that at the end of the day we will always need food as a society.
100%, yeah.
And that's where I sort of thought, there's definitely some form of job safety in this.
Yeah, definitely.
And it was that period that I thought, this is the destination for me, even though as I left that farm at 12 years old to move closer into Bristol, Philip, the farmer, said, Henry, promise me one thing, that when you grow up, you will never be a farmer. So,
Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't entirely listen to him in that respect.
So obviously, you've had that experience and you obviously realised that, milk comes from cows and meat comes from cows, and all of a sudden you start to realize. I remember, like with my kids, we lived next to a farm and we'd have all the lambs appear and then all the lambs disappear, and then they were like, is that, and we're like, yeah, it is. And it's just that realization that the food is real, and although you can go to a supermarket and see them all vacuum packed, there is a process in between the field to the fork, and ultimately that is modern living, and it's been around for years and years and years, but we just become sanitized to it because it's so readily available.
Yeah, exactly. And there is also this sort of, with the exception of chicken, there is actually a sort of a slight disconnect even in the branding. Is that if you imagine that the most children, most individuals, when they see a cow in the field, they will call it a cow or a calf, and yet the product is beef or veal, and you see a pig or a piglet, and then actually it's pork. There's very slight variations on what they actually are, and as you say, you see it all beautifully presented, often in a supermarket, with not really any referral to what the original animal was in terms of an image on the packaging, because as you say, it's a little bit too emotional at that point, and a lot of people would just go, no, I can't eat Bambi, or I can't eat the cute little lamb kind of thing.
So you obviously get older and you're maybe sort of like 16, 17, 18 sort of age, and then obviously the question comes up, what do you want to do in life, or what do you want to do as a career? Were you, right, I'm going to continue this journey, or were you, I want to do something completely different?
Yeah, so in that sort of period of life, the school that I was at was very much sort of, unless you're heading to be a doctor or a solicitor or something along those lines, and if Oxbridge isn't on the horizon, then they didn't really care about me, in short. But my housemaster did, in short, and I was starting to win awards for, funny enough, the dairy industry and all sorts of other forms of agriculture, and he was lovely. He would always turn up to the award ceremonies and be there to support me and let me slip out of school to go and receive these. So it was lovely that whilst the school itself didn't show the support, he did.
Yeah.
And I ended up going to Cirencester, which...
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I've
which
driven
was...
past it plenty of times. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It certainly was a lot of fun. And
you say that with a knowing look.
yeah, for what I can remember. I studied effectively food and farm management, and so I got sort of a general overview of agriculture in terms of production, but also all the regulation behind it. And then when I left there, I actually ended up going into the yachting world, and so I used to look after very, very large boats, mainly in the Mediterranean.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was really cool. That was quite a fast, hard introduction into luxury food. So we were sourcing A5 Wagyu from Japan, getting it shipped over within 24 hours, the finest champagnes, the finest oysters, all those sorts of things sold at extortionate rates.
Yeah.
And it wasn't really accounting for what actually needed to be accounted for in life as such, but it was a remarkable experience to see that side. And after then, I actually ended up falling into hospitality. So I ended up working with Robin Hudson, who's the chief exec of the Pig Hotel Group at the time, ex-founder of Hotel du Vin. And I worked alongside him on his budding entrepreneur scheme in terms of learning sort of the hotel trade. So I ended up doing my wine exams. I spent some time in the restaurant as well as front of house and within the sort of the front desk sort of side. And it was probably just shy of 2 years that I ended up spending there, at the point that he very kindly said, would you like to go and open up the hotel in Harlem Bay, which was their new one in Cornwall at the time.
Right. Okay.
And it was a tremendous offer, but there were various aspects of the role that sadly didn't suit me. And so I ended up effectively, conveniently falling into what was happening at home.
Right. Okay.
And that was sort of where it all started. And home was just beginning to become a bit more exciting. We were really starting to find our feet and find our, start to deliver on our values rather than find our values. And so that would have been about, ironically, that was March 2020. Brilliant time to leave hospitality.
Of course.
And so that's sort of then where it all kicked off at home.
So tell us a story about Belmont Estate, how you ended up acquiring it, because that's like another thread to the story, and then
Yes.
Henry converges in between there. So yeah, tell us about Belmont Estate, because obviously was it just like a rundown estate? Was it just not operating? What was the position before it got acquired?
It was a bit of everything, really. So the estate dates back to sort of the mid 1700s, and it's been on a really fascinating journey, sort of through three families there. It was mainly the Turners, the Seymours, and then eventually the Gibbs. And it was Lord Wraxall who passed away, and I think it was 2001, 2002, where he left. Well, he didn't leave the estate. He had no one to leave it to. And so that was when the National Trust came in and purchased it. And it was the largest purchase that the National Trust had done at the time. I think they ended up paying 17 million for the main house and a few other properties.
That was not Tortworth Court.
Tinsfield, are you thinking?
Tinnisfield.
Yes,
Tinnisfield Manor.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So Tinsfield's our younger sibling stroke neighbour.
Right.
And in short, if I remember correctly, it was something around 50 million that they needed to generate to do the property up.
I remember now. It was, I think they bought it for 17.1 million.
Yeah.
And the 17 million went to the grandchildren, like 1 million each. That was the story that I heard.
Probably.
That the grandchildren inherited 1 million each, and that was the deal. But yeah, it was the largest purchase that they'd ever made.
Exactly.
By some distance.
Yeah, very much so. And to be fair, it's a very successful property of theirs today.
Yeah.
For us, we were aware of Belmont at the time. Belmont never actually ended up being purchased by them. They sort of left it out in one of the lots. But a gentleman came along called Roger Lewis. Roger is an interesting character, I should say. He wanted to live the life of a rock star. He made his money in, I think it was a form of development or something in the city. And with those who sort of live the life of a rock star, for those on camera will see that there are certain habits that come with it.
Okay.
And he ended up being taken for a ride, in short, by the people who were doing the property up for him, just because he was away with the fairies most of the time. And so with that, eventually various bank repossessions started to come in. And so when those bank repossessions were coming in, we actually were able to effectively start purchasing little pieces. And so my father my mother and my father always wanted to have some land. From my father's point of view, it's the sort of the utility value of money. By owning land, you can get so much more joy. You can welcome more people. The experiences that you have can just be continuous and can go so much further in terms of making memories compared to, say, buying a car or a boat or something like that. And so that was sort of where my father's side started. And my mother was, I'm going to sort of use the term eco-warrior. She has been a member of the Soil Association since she was about 18, whilst if I was being lovely, I'd say, but she's only 21, so it hasn't been that long, but she's not quite that anymore. And so she was sort of a hippie before it was trendy, and she was looking at terms of where our food comes from, the organic movement, how can we start that reconnection with people to their food and where it comes from, and that access to nature that hopefully we all have and should have. And so that's sort of where it started. And we purchased our first patch of land in December 2012, and that was the start of the journey to what I think has now been another 14 purchases over the last 13 years, just slowly patching it all back together. Belmont itself was a circle within a circle within a circle of ownership, and we worked our way in rather than out. So it was calculated risk.
Your father was an entrepreneur as well, wasn't he?
Very, very much so.
Very much so. So he invented, is that right? He invented something?
Pretty much, yeah. So he, when he was... I would say he's about 24, 26. He inherited a business from my grandfather, which was a failing business at the time. It's manufactured poles to change light bulbs. And he sort of looked at it, and it was the pole that was of the appeal, because he thought, you can reach places that are hard to get. He then totally diverted the whole business into actually what was smoke detector testing. And so very niche. He created multiple products, but the one that is probably the better known one. And you may have seen his product actually. If you imagine that someone has come through, they've come to test the smoke alarms, and you see a little red pole go up with a thing on the end, that will then produce, it was heat, carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide, and it effectively is a tri-tester for smoke alarms. He ended up developing that, took over the majority of the UK market share, exported to 136 countries, had manufacturing in China, New Zealand, I think in the States as well, and in the UK, and then eventually sold in, I think it was the early 20s as such.
So that obviously set him in a good position to then start acquiring the land and whatever, but What's interesting with me is that you've got this narrative on an estate that's a generational thing going on, and then you've got another family building the generational line that eventually take it over effectively.
In short, yes.
In short, so it's like, I mean, people don't often talk about generational wealth, and for me, obviously the Gibbs family, there's a whole narrative there and a whole story there, and I look at that and I go, well, how many other people have that insight that wealth can go beyond one generation to two generations? It's very rare. I think the stat I heard was that it's very rare that it stays beyond 4 generations. Well,
I've heard 3. So
is it 3?
Yeah. So so as you say, the sort of the phrases that I've heard is that the first generation makes it, the second generation sits on it, and the third generation spaffs it.
That's it. And then the fourth generation great.
Exactly that.
Which is where I got to. The fourth generation end up with nothing, and I have to start again.
Yes.
And it's like, oh wow, and I think for me, we were talking earlier off camera about Yellowstone and the journey there. But I think the story of this series, it lasts 7 generations was the story, but eventually, it goes back full circle. And my point is that I'm very much, how do you inspire the next generation and educate them, which is why we homeschool our kids, because we're doing things differently. And they're saying, well, I'm not just building for me, I'm building for generations. And it's interesting, like with your situation and that journey, is that part of the generational thing is land. It's just not, we don't talk about that enough anymore. And obviously it's now got into the populace with the whole farmers thing and the tax and all that sort of craziness, inheritance stuff, which I'm sure you're having to deal with right now. But all of a sudden people are going, what? So we can't build generationally then? Is this what we're saying? And I'm saying, well, It's how we used to do it. It's just we've got so used to an instant society, we don't think beyond ourselves.
You've nailed it. And I was sat here just with the term sustainability rolling around in my head, because in short, the whole idea of sustainability is that you're able to live within your means without foregoing the means of others in the future. And so if you are to look at that, then in short, that we're not living sustainably, in the fact that the whole idea of the human race is that you have your offspring and you hopefully set them up in a position where they're able to do well, and you continue that success.
Correct.
Because we're a human race and we need to move forward and do well and progress.
Yeah.
But if we have all of these challenges, we'll call them, it makes it rather difficult to continue that.
It's that crab bucket mentality that it's like, well, you've done well, but we put 100 years into this plan before.
Exactly.
And I think that's again goes back to, I've got a group of guys that I know, they're entrepreneurs based in the US, and they're building like 100-year visions. And they're like, but you're not going to be around. It doesn't matter. I'm building for generations. They've even got like family crests that they're putting together,
cool.
Which is amazing. Like they've researched the name, they've recognized where they come from, and they said, no, we're going to reset and we're going to go again. And ultimately, if you studied some of the history of America, that's how America began, right? It was like generational handing over whatever, but we just like turned into this society that's just grab. And if anyone else has planned outside of that, it's like they're evil. So like generational wealth is seen as a bad thing.
Yes.
And it's like, no, it isn't a bad thing. It's that this family has actually been living how we should live to some extent.
We're obsessed with instant gratification, and that's over everything. I hope they don't shoot me for saying this, but a lot of my friends
probably more chance with you being on a
yes, quite possibly. Some of my friends, when I was living with them at university, they were consistently in their overdraft, and that's how they lived. And you just sort of think, how did you get into that position at all? My father, he taught me to plan. And I think it was the age of about 14, he gave me a spreadsheet and he said, right, you need to track every financial transaction that you do, and you should never go overdrawn. He said, you are able to plan into the future, and therefore you should be able to live within your means. And he said, if you can't, well then do something about it. And if you say that to some people, they go, well, but that's not fair. And you think, I understand what, there are challenges, but
you can get caught up into the game of leverage.
Oh yeah.
So you're leveraging one debt against another and a debt against another. And I think for me, that's not generational wealth, because ultimately you come to a point where someone's got to pay it off. So you might have been great at leveraging that for 40 years, but eventually when you pop your clogs, then hang on a second, there's debts or remortgage on property that you thought you owned and you actually don't. So, it's a really interesting thing that's, just coming out of our conversation now about building for generations, and not seeing it as a negative thing, seeing it as a positive thing. So your dad then starts to sort of like buy, or your dad and your mum start buying up property, and then obviously your mum's eco warrior stuff. Obviously there's a stirring there to make that happen, and then obviously yourself. So you've gone back. Yes. And what was the state of play then when you come back? Was there a role for you immediately, or you're like...
Sort of, yeah. So our events it was one of those ones that we were still looking at ways to bring people together. And so whilst COVID had sort of stamped out everything in a sort of Monty Python-esque way, we were looking at ways that we could make it work, because in short, I think what kind of happened is we got a little bit carried away, in that we sort of went, that's conveniently come up. That used to be part of the estate. We should bring that back in. And places like these have vast running costs to be able to maintain them in good working order, and to be able to work with the people that you need to be able to maintain those relationships. There's some serious overheads, and so therefore you need to start looking at all of these ways to generate an income, as well as what we wanted to do was deliver it in an ethical sense as such, or how we feel is an ethical sense. And so what we were starting to do is, we probably just after COVID, we were a little bit of a venue almost. So whilst we were starting to do things like yoga courses, we were doing our butchery courses as well as all forms of dining opportunities and cookery schools, in what we felt was a way to bring people together, to connect them not only with each other, but also with food. We quite quickly realised it didn't work, in short. So whilst it was okay in terms of the money front, it was starting to head in the right direction. We'd already been through the sort of the process of what people do with a small holding, and they do meat boxes and charcoal and firewood and all those sorts of things. Yeah. It just doesn't work unless you're operating at a vast scale. It does not work, and so we actually conveniently I think it was the second lockdown we used, where we were very lucky, and we pulled some people round a table who were various director and partner levels within some well-known firms, mainly in the Bristol area. And we said, this is what we want to do. We want to restore nature, attend to the climate crisis, and we would like to bring people together to learn about these, as well as provide a connection opportunity for, effectively, it was children at the time, and it's grown to be everyone actually, to nature. So we can have these discussions, and we can also host volunteering opportunities to aid the communities that we all live in and reside in various ways. And so 3 of the 3 companies that we were speaking to basically said, we love that, that's brilliant. We think, as firms, that it was when sort of ESG and CSR were the terms, they said, we're looking for ways, how can we integrate, how can we do things, how can we get our employees more involved? And so over the it was probably the next 2 years, it was sort of 21, maybe 22 into 2024, we ended up sort of playing with a model and a product which eventually has evolved into what it is today. And it's designed exactly that. It's about getting people involved in not only what is important to companies, but also what should, and I think deep down is, important to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's giving people an exposure to, how difficult it can be to run a large estate, because ultimately the reason why you could argue that it was sold off in the first place, the whole of Tintersfield, is because they can keep up the running costs. There's only so many paintings you can sell, and tapestries and carpets, and eventually you sold it all, and you still got to run it. Or you end up developing your land, which never goes down well with the local population, because they like to walk through those fields as such.
Absolutely. Funny enough, we're doing some talking with an estate not too far from here, actually. They've been around for 300 years. They've done very well over the last 300 years. And I was talking with the next generation, and he said, we want to be here for another 300 years. So we're now starting our next 300-year vision. And you sort of think, okay, 100 years, very impressive. Your next 200 years is probably going to be a little bit blurry, but, good on you.
No, it's great. And that's my thing. It's like with the publicity of inheriting farms and all that sort of stuff, it's like, it's clear that there's no real understanding of what building generationally looks like nowadays. And
exactly.
That's the sad thing from it. So as a business, then you're opening your doors now. You're getting loads of people. But what sort of impact have you had now since you've been doing what you've been doing in the last couple of years? What is it? Just a case of just changing people's mindsets, or have you physically done something that's like we've seen the change in it?
Both. Sure. Okay, so if I take 2 of the 3 pillars, because those are the 2 that we've actually really delivered on quite recently, I'll start with nature. So in terms of nature, and it was about 2019, we bought a farm called Watercress Farm, which adjoins Belmont. And Watercress it now totals about 140 acres. It was all conventionally managed previously to us. It was very much sort of all about silage production mainly, or wheat production, and it pretty much been the same crop grown there again and again and again for the past few decades. So ecologically, it was highly degraded. We saw this as an opportunity to rewild it, in short, and give the land back to nature. And so we started with a baseline survey. We then took out all of the internal fences within that land holding, and we've now got what's pretty much one ring fence around the entire area. So it's almost like a 140-acre field.
Wow.
With various hedgerows sort of trying to break it up. There's a river called the Lanyo, and there's an old poplar forestry plantation there too. And that is one of the coolest things we've done. In that it was the baseline survey. It was around 400 species in our baseline in 2019. As of March this year, we've just recorded our 2,247th species, which is
incredible.
Yeah, the repopulation of nature is just remarkable. And
is it quite quick? I mean, once you put it back, once you put it back to where you could almost like it is back to nature, does nature like, it's almost like word of mouth gets around?
In short, yes.
Yeah.
In the first year, it was sort of like, oh, we've just been inundated with thistle, and that's about it.
Yeah.
As you know, in the first year, nothing happened. In the second year, it started to do stuff, and that's just because the seed bed within the soil is so low, and just because there's all these residual chemicals within the ground that hold it back. Once it gets going, it's amazing at the rate that it does happen, and this beautifully links into the other pillar of community. And so the reason that I know all of this data is we started a volunteering program in probably it was about 2020, and that was with our old estate manager. And initially we were a little bit skeptical about it. We really wanted to bring people in, but volunteering programs normally have a stereotype that actually they're just a vast tea and biscuit expenditure, and what they were going to do or did, you end up doing again. But we were so lucky in that actually our first volunteers were really, really good nature nerds as such. We've now built that up to, it's about 320 volunteers in the community.
Right, okay.
They come down probably 3 to 4 times a week, depending on which of the 15 species leads that attend, and they'll do anything from bat surveys. We did a bat walk last Friday with the community. We also do bird surveys, moths. We look at the water quality. We look at the soil quality. We're constantly monitoring everything to see that biodiversity uplift. But not only that, we've got a WhatsApp group there's about 140 on the WhatsApp group.
Wow.
And it's just constant pinging of engagement to say, look, they found cave spiders the other day, and they're just not only just cave spiders, but they were showing the video within the cave, and my God, the amount that's in there this year, it's a lot more.
We'll not be going near there.
No. Even I'm normally okay with spiders, but even I was watching that, I got a little bit of a shiver.
Yeah, I bet.
So I mean that's probably one of the areas, and then the last one to touch on in terms of the impact is the Nature Connection program. And so that was my mother's idea, really, from wanting myself and my brothers to have the opportunity to run through fields, climb trees, and jump in streams and get muddy and have the childhood that we should all have.
Yeah,
we launched this program probably in around 2020 as well, and it was all about providing a free opportunity for people to connect with nature. And in short, it went really well. Or it has been going really well, and we've welcomed thousands of individuals, anyone from state schools to private schools to charities to refugees to young carers. We've had them all, and we're now working with universities and even businesses. We're saying, look, if you can spare some time as a professional, come hug a tree. I was on doing a thing last week, and I said to the guy, I said, look, go and hug a tree. And he did. And he said, actually, it was weirdly nice. So hug a tree. And we're on target to welcome about 6,000 individuals this year.
Wow.
It's going really, really well. It's all done for free as such. Currently, the family pays the majority of it, but we're working on a new business model through effectively corporate partnership that will then start to replace that funding mechanism and eventually lead to its scale. And we'd like to welcome more than 6,000 per annum as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, what I made a decision many years ago, maybe 6 years ago, just before the pandemic hit, to move into the country, and I wouldn't go back. It's just like where I am. I was very much Mr. City, and it was weird because once I experienced it, my wife was shocked. She goes, "What do you mean you want to move to the country?" It's a bit weird, but we did, and now just being around the countryside, being able to just get out from work and just go for a walk, and you're in the nature. I mean, it's you take it for granted, but it's great to be. And I remember one of Claire's early jobs when we were together. She launched a kids club in Knoll West, and we took a bunch of kids to the beach in West Wales. They'd never been to a beach before. They'd never seen the sea before. Wow. And the point was that they probably never would have. They'd never have gone that far. They would have stayed in their community, and that was it. And it just opened their eyes to, oh my gosh, the world's a pretty big place. You know, it's not just concrete and the odd flags up for football. It's like, oh my gosh, this is like a big place, a beautiful place. And, you know, the kids came back changed. You know, just because they saw that. So like the stuff that you're doing in the community, and it's absolutely, we take it for granted. Like I used to climb trees. I know people are like, you climb trees? Yeah, I used to climb trees, go as high as I possibly could.
Yeah.
We spent hours in the woods and all that sort of stuff. And nowadays we don't. It's just screens all the time.
We're connected in a technological way too easily these days.
Yeah.
But, you know, as you said, when you were climbing trees as a child, so nature is intrinsically linked with the Fibonacci code. So mathematics, I'm yet to understand it properly, but thoroughly is linked into nature. And you would have been learning as you're climbing those trees, and effectively a risk take, isn't it? It's one of those ones that if you hold on to the wrong branch, you're going down.
I know. And I think about now that how high I used to go, and I was thinking, if I had fallen, I would be dead.
Yeah.
But you just don't even think about it, really. You just keep going.
As children, we don't. We have this wonderful ability not to wrap everything up in red tape, and to enjoy and to find the most simple pleasure in the most simple things. You know, when some of these times you take a group of 25, 30 children into a field and you say, okay, what would you like to do? And to start with, they seem a little bit perplexed and sort of, what do you mean? Like, where's the screens? Why aren't we in high-vis jackets and all those sorts of things? And there was one in particular, really lovely moment where one of them said, can we run? And Martin, who's head of Nature Connection, said, yeah. And they went, well, how far can we run? As far as you want. How fast can we run? As fast as you want.
Wow.
And then they sort of, at that moment, sort of slowly started to walk away and then started to jog a little bit. And then they were full on running, you know, running through the long grasses. And it was just one of those magical moments that was the feeling of release. That was where you could be the child that you wanted to be, rather than being saying, oh, nope, sorry, you can't run on that concrete playground because, you know, you might get hurt. Life is about learning.
But it's bringing back the art of play. And I think that's the thing. The kids don't know how to play anymore. And being able to bring them to the point where, you know, here's nature, go and enjoy it like we used to. You know, I think we joked the other day, it was like we were sat here, weather's nice, and both our younger two kids are just staring at screens. And we're like, no, there's the bikes. Just go and get them. And what's quite funny with me is that I remember growing up, my dad used to go, here's your bikes at 9 o'clock in the morning in the summer. I don't want to see you at 5 o'clock.
It's brilliant.
And we would go out into the countryside and ride miles and not think anything of it.
Yeah.
But today it's just like, what do you mean I got to leave the house?
Funny enough, when you said that, I saw some nodding just behind you, as if to be like, yep, I remember that. I mean, those were the days. That's where the adventure was. That's where those cool tales as you were coming up, you know, doing things that were a little bit naughty. And that's how you made friendships as well.
Well, we found the other day, because not too far from here, there's a little river and there's a rope swing, and we discovered it last year. So yeah, when the weather changed, they were pretty much down there most of the time, and all the kids around the area. And it was like a throwback to like 20, 25 years ago. It was like, oh my gosh, the kids still play with rope swings. Yeah. And some of them are doing videos and stuff else. But the point is that we're out in nature and enjoying it. And I think, you know, we almost like go, well, we can do what we want in the city, but we can't go to a farm now. We can't go and walk in the countryside. And it's like, well, no, actually, spaces like yourselves is bringing people back to what we all used to do and take for granted.
Exactly that. But it's also, you know, those opportunities to get out have so many more positive effects on the individual when they're out there. You know, there's so many mental health benefits in terms of getting out into nature. There's also proven scientific evidence that by spending, I think it's 30 minutes in a woodland per day, boosts what they call the NK cell, which is a natural killer cell. It's kind of like a tanked up white blood cell, basically, which is proven to be able to fight off carcinogenic cells. Wow. And so we've got all of these incredible health benefits that are, again, intrinsically linked with nature that we don't use, actually. It's starting to become green prescribing as a thing that's starting to become more well known and more widely known through the NHS. But you know, that's arguably free compared to the vast amount of prescriptions that you'll end up prescribing, and therefore is a different form of cost.
Well, that's it. And I think for me, you know, just being in the countryside where there's no, you know, that orange light you
Yes.
know, and you can't see anything because you just got this horrible orange light that's just there, and then it's now a horrible white light because everything's going LED. And then for me, it's like being in the, and you just look up and you can see all the stars.
You've literally stolen the words from my mouth.
Yeah, it's just, for me, it's like, wow, you know, that experience. I don't think kids get that anymore.
No, we're only 15, 20 minutes from the centre of Bristol.
Yeah.
And if you go down into, especially Watercress, which is probably just another 5 minutes on, it was after the Bat Walk, and we were having this fantastic conversation with, there was about 36 people who came, and it was really lovely that at the end people went, I can see the sky, I can see the stars. And I sort of went, well, yeah, you know, that's what we've had here. And they went, I haven't seen the stars in years.
Yeah.
And you sort of think, oh, you forget that being in Bristol, even just that, 10 minutes further in, it just disappears.
Yeah.
And there is something so magical about seeing the night sky.
Yeah. I mean, I used to stare up for hours. You just lay down and just look up, you know. It's
tempting
amazing
to see the shooting star.
Yeah. I remember, like some of my abiding memories. I remember going to a camp where we trekked across Dartmoor, crazy enough. I don't know how we did it, but we bought we bought like a scale electric set that was battery operated, so we put that in our backpack. So when we unpacked, we popped the scale electric track in the tent, and everyone was like
awesome.
converging, racing and playing. And then we did sit around the fire and look up as well, you know. And it was, I always remember seeing the shooting stars. I go, oh my gosh, it's a real thing. It's not CGI.
No, for now.
For now. But it's nature, you know, and it's being out and about. So for me, it's like, you're obviously educating businesses, you're educating, you know, kids and families and things like that. So what's the plans going forward now? We talked earlier and we joked about world domination. So what more for Belmont Estate? Is it to buy more near you, or is it to take that education to other estates and help them do what you've done?
It's a little bit of everything.
Okay.
So we were only having this conversation the other day as a family, actually. And for us, there's a few things that we want to achieve as such. We would like to grow and expand. A little bit of that will be around where we are currently. We actually have a place up in Scotland, just south of Inverness, which allows us to deliver nature restoration pretty much on a landscape scale. We've got a lot of peatland and woodland restoration and creation projects up there, which is more sort of on the climate side linked, so carbon credits. And then we're probably looking for another 2 to 3 sites dotted around the country, which will be not too far from a major conurbation is the plan. Unlike Scotland, what we lack for in scale in terms of Belmont, we make up for in proximity to access as such. Yeah. We want people to be able to come out, access, learn, and have that opportunity to connect. As that sort of continues, we're also starting to work with and partner with other farms and estates around the country. My vision of success is actually to be copied, because at the point that someone copies you, then that actually it's sort of a tilt of the cap. It's saying, actually you've got something good there and we want a piece. Yeah. I'm okay with that, because if you're going to be delivering sustainable food production as well as nature restoration, attending to the climate crisis and connecting communities with where all of that comes from, brilliant. Copy me. Do it. I'll be honest.
So do you see like each member of your family then having a little estate doing...
Don't know, to be honest.
Building their own little kingdom.
Yeah, don't know. Never really thought of it in that respect.
Yeah, because obviously we talked about generations. So what is the plan? Is it all going to be handed over to you guys and you're going to run with it? Is that the hope that you'll be able to do that?
If I'm good enough, then yes. It's very much one of those ones that, as you say, if you want something to be successful and generational, just because you're a member of the family doesn't mean you're good enough to do it. And so it's important to ensure that the success of something that will hopefully continue for generations to come isn't dumbfounded by someone who wasn't up to it. And so I have my strengths. My brother, my middle brother, he's currently working for PwC in the Channel Islands, so therefore he's very on sort of strength in the financial sector. I think he'll come back eventually. He's he's showing interest, but I think he's a few years away.
Yeah.
And then my youngest brother is at Warwick University doing philosophy, politics, and economics. So he's also incredibly book smart.
Yeah.
He is amazing with people, actually. He's
okay.
really switched on, and he's got more of a political background in terms of his experience so far, even at the age of 21.
Right.
And he's also showing signs. I think he wants to do a stint in London at some point. So if we were to pop up, I think, somewhere on the west side of London, then I think he'd probably use that as a base. But he wants to try and make a political influence, because that's to an extent what's needed to drive change. I don't think it will happen in terms of the policy changing, but he wants to see what he can do.
But it goes back to what you're saying as well, is having really cool people around you, you know, because I know, having met you before, you talked about some of the team that work with you and work for you, and you know, that's part of the journey, right? Having the right team around you that can see the vision, see what you're trying to build, you know. And as I said, we talk about purpose, and it's about people can fulfill their purpose working alongside you. But I love the vision of it being generational. I think that's the thing that excites me. It's like, we don't quite know where we want to go, but we want to build out. Like that person saying, hey, we want to plan for the next 300 years. You're obviously doing something good for them to reach out and try and connect you, you know?
Yeah, exactly. We've we haven't got time for me to talk about all the members of the team, but if I look at the outdoor team in particular, the majority of them actually didn't come from a farming background. As you say, you know, they wanted a change of purpose in their life. They wanted to do something different, and in that they came to us and said, look, I haven't got this experience, but I'd like to learn. We gave them an opportunity, and they're smashing it. It's so lovely to see. And one of the individuals I work with quite closely is Martin, our head of Nature Connection. And Martin, he's really cool. And it's weird saying that, because he was actually my geography teacher at school.
Oh, wow.
And so it was very weird now working with what was your ex-teacher. But he's a fanatic. Two, he's full of energy. He does not stop, even to the point where I'm like, this is great, but you do need to slow down a little bit. And Martin was a geography teacher for about 25 years. He also does a little bit of writing for National Geographic and the Royal Geographical Society. He's also ex-hospitality, and he basically, sort of I won't get his word for word, but he said, you know, for so many years I've been teaching about how it's not going well in terms of where we are environmentally. He said, now I'm actually able to not only teach but do, and he said I'm actually starting to action, and so he is awesome at what he does. He's going out and lecturing big companies, universities, schools. Anyone he can talk to is not safe from having
get him on the podcast.
He would love that. You might need a double session, but he'd love that.
But ultimately, he's doing what he enjoys. He's doing passion. He's worked in different sectors, so he's a perfect person to get on. So yeah, Henry, if you want to put it my way, we're definitely happy.
Definitely, Martin. This is a call for you.
Yeah, there you go, Martin. We want you on, Martin. Come on. So, if you're a business and you kind of like leaning towards CSR, ESG, B Corp, that sort of world, and they're thinking, well, you know, how do I demonstrate my more conscious side of the company? How do they engage with someone like you? Because you mentioned you've got a few schemes and things like that. Where would they start? You know, they're obviously listening to this podcast now and go, I love what Henry's saying, but how would I engage with you and Belmont Estate and to make the steps towards either educating my staff or being part of something beyond just making money? How would they go about that with you?
Good question. Well, firstly, I hope they are enjoying what I'm saying, but we've developed a model that brings in our three pillars. So climate, nature, and community. And what we are doing currently is we're working with companies at the moment, so TLT Solicitors and Millstead Landon, an accountancy firm law firm and an accountancy firm in Bristol. And they are people who have they've pledged an amount of money, which goes into the climate restoration projects that we do. So we supply carbon credits so that they're able to adhere to any carbon neutrality or net zero goals that they've set, sometimes in line with the science-based target initiatives. and we're then able to help them fulfill those obligations. The other thing that we're doing is the nature restoration. So out of our Scottish estate, we are delivering effectively also a voluntary nature uplift. So we're taking a portion of those funds and putting it into various monitoring projects that we're doing, such as eDNA or bioacoustics. We're also looking at restoring the habitats and the ecosystems up there so that we can effectively continue to increase biodiversity within the Scottish Isles. We're not doing that down in England just yet, because we've got that's linked into another thing called biodiversity net gain, which is a whole other topic, but mainly targeted at the built environment.
Yeah.
They are then responsible for 250 metres squared as such of land per employee within the firm. And so with that, they then make the statistics either on a quarterly or end of year impact so that they can see the uplift that it's had. So it means that in theory, you're never going to be accused of greenwashing, because what I've said is you're going to deliver an uplift on 250 metres squared of land per employee. I haven't said you're going to have one eagle. I haven't said you're going to have an X number of beetles. So it's removing that potential barrier or loop or noose as such for you to not do very well out of. And so that's how our nature side is going. And then we've got the community. So as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the funding model for our Nature Connection program, each employee, a portion of that fund, a portion of that value goes into our connection program and is responsible for delivering X number of hours per child. Right. We then also have various other walks, talks and dining opportunities that we also deliver, partly on site, partly off site, because we want people to further their knowledge. If they're a diehard environmentalist, brilliant, come along, challenge, be a talker on our own panel, do those sorts of things, because we want to continue the conversation. At the same time, if you're a little bit shy and you just want to hide in the back, brilliant, then come along and bring your friends, bring your family. We need to really catalyse this moment of time to create the change that we need, in short, to survive as a race. And then lastly, the other thing that we also do is we have our volunteering opportunities. And so we work with schools and local councils and parks, because we also want to give back to the places that we reside in. And so we're doing anything from litter picking to reinstatement of public footpaths to taking out old playground equipment as well that's been deemed unsafe. All those sorts of things that are costs to organisations that don't necessarily have the funds, but time is such a valuable asset that we are able to give. And so we organise those days for the companies. In short, we often have conversations with the chief execs or the FDs of these companies, and they come along and say, look, I'd like to implement it for my office, or I'd like to implement it for the company, or a regional team or something along those lines. And we're working ways to do that sort of stuff. There's lots of other things that we do, from other events that we host at the estate where they can bring their clients. We also do co-marketing sometimes, and we do all these other co-hosted events, which are all about creating a thing of change that I think a lot of people want to do and want to deliver, but because it's not mandatory or compulsory through government law just yet, people are a little bit hesitant, because there isn't sort of a return on investment in a direct respect. But it's setting your company out from the rest. It's also showing that you do care more than just making money. It comes back to, as we mentioned, in terms of B Corp, and it delivers a genuine smile on your face when you see the difference that it can make. That's what we do.
No, it's great, because I think what's happening now is the workforce that's coming through are a lot more conscious of the environment, and then you've got the older generation, which now is probably baby boomers are retiring. You've got Gen X, and Gen X remember playing. They remember the running around, the climbing up the trees, and they remember that they haven't been doing it so much. So there is almost that nostalgia trip as well for them to say, well, actually, it's all right to say, oh, it's not like that anymore. It's like, well, we can actually do something about it. Yeah. And so as a generation coming through is saying, hey, we want to be a bit more better stewards of our environment, then there are opportunities to do that. And, I find it great that there's that rewilding, and that journey is for me, is a great way of almost bringing back Britain to the way it used to look. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean. a really interesting, as you say, the way that it used to look. If we look around the room, and we're all a relatively similar age, and so therefore our baseline is going to be different to those of your children and to those of your parents. Yeah. And so one of the things that I often use just to sort of, there's a statistic that out of the 240 countries and territories in the world, England places at 232. So we're the 8th worst biodiverse country in the world.
Wow.
And some people go, whoa, that's actually quite a lot. And some people go, nah, that's not true. It's England. We're green and pleasant land. And then you sort of go, okay, let's flick back to the time that when you were driving through the country lanes, maybe 10, 15 years ago, or even when your parents were driving through, especially in the summer months, and your number plate, your windscreen would be littered with insects. Yeah. You'd have to clean it off. You'd be using your windscreen wipers throughout the summer. That doesn't happen anymore. In fact, there's a little bit more biodiversity I've noticed this year, which is good.
Yeah, I've noticed it because I cleaned the car the other day and I was like, wow, great.
There's insects. It's everywhere. It's a nice problem to have, but at the same time, oops. Yeah. And I think with that, that's the spark that makes people go, oh, yeah, no, you're right. It has changed. Something is different. And it's finding the opportunity to act on that, as such as you say, because otherwise there's this shifting baseline that your children will go, well, I never really saw nature. I thought that's always how it has been.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's interesting because we were filming in Denver and we were flying back over, and you obviously come over into sort of like United Kingdom, and you just see how green the land is by comparison. It's like going from sort of like the mountainous sort of like greys and blues or whatever, and then you're coming into this rich green. It's like coming to Shire.
Yes.
And what was amazing about it was like, wow. And yet when you dig beneath the surface, we've got, cities growing. There's no real consideration for farming and this sort of stuff. And I think for the first time, I would say in recent memory, I think because of the whole inheritance things and farmers kicking off, and maybe even Jeremy Clarkson, people are starting to ask deeper questions about, hang on a minute, where is our food coming from? And what does life look like? And yeah, this stuff doesn't taste very nice. And it's like, well, yeah, it has to be worked, And I think one of the things you pointed out earlier on is that even the ground that we use to farm, the minerals in the ground in itself are not there as they used to be.
No, there's, I've got a little bank of statistics. And one of the questions that someone posed me the other day was, how many carrots would you have to eat to gain the same nutritional benefit from a carrot that your grandparents used to eat? Do you know? 10? Not bad. 8.
Oh, wow.
So 8 carrots today is equivalent to 1 when they were eating around as such, which is terrifying. Yeah. Soil today is purely a medium, realistically, in that we grow food. We have to add all these additional nutritional benefits as such. The fact that all of our flour seems to be fortified because we bleach it to a point that there's no nutrition in for it to be able to actually be called flour. Yeah. And then we've got to add all the vitamins and minerals back in. And for some reason that is deemed good, which then means we can deliver a product which delivers just about the right nutrition that you in theory need to survive as a human. And we don't cost in any of the externalities that actually are costing the world. And so you think, we've really messed up.
Yeah. I mean, I remember someone talking to me about zinc, people are taking zinc supplements because there's no zinc in the earth anymore. And I'm like, so Holland and Barrett have done quite well out of this. Maybe that was their master plan, but the point of it is, if we're having to keep adding and adding and adding and adding, then something's wrong. And it's like yourself, you're asking those bigger questions. And how do I solve what's wrong? And how do we educate people to say there is something wrong, that we need to do something about it? So Henry, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure. How would someone get in touch with you? You got a website, LinkedIn? How would they get in touch with you?
All of the above. So one of the reasons I'm busy is because I like to chat. But that means I like to chat with everyone. So reach out through our website, info@belmont.estate. In terms of our website, it's actually just going through a bit of a renewal at the moment, so it'll be more up to date soon. And then, I'm on LinkedIn, everything. And then, come to the estate, come for a walk, come see, join our free Nature Connection walks. It's finding an excuse to chat and solve the world's problems.
Thank you so much. It's been really, really educational and it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Purpose People podcast. How you can help us is to like and subscribe our YouTube channel. You can also subscribe to our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, Google, and Amazon. That helps us get our message out there to help people go after their dreams, double down on it, and be successful in life on their terms.